In the meantime, I would like to welcome everyone from my part. My name is Miriam Hitzelberger, and I have the pleasure of guiding us through the next 2 hours. I'm working in Baden-Württemberg in the south of Germany for an umbrella organization of different civil society organizations and groups working in the field of development cooperation. And I'm also working for an initiative called Future Fashion, which is dealing with the topic of sustainable fashion. Before we get started, and I think Alexander Bestler is trying to get a hold of Genet in Ethiopia, and Juliane is now with us. I hope you can hear us now. Probably not. So for our participants, I would just give a few technical comments. Maybe you already know everything because you've had so many Zoom meetings over the last year, and maybe you've already been in one of the previous sessions. So you should all be automatically put on mute. And I would like to ask everyone to put their microphone on mute as long as you're not talking, just in order to avoid any background noises or echoes. You're more than welcome to switch on your video. It's always a pleasure to see who we are talking to on this panel. But the session is also going to be recorded. It will be made available on the internet afterwards. So in case you don't want to have your face seen, visible on the recording, you are also welcome to turn off your video. Also, if you are experiencing any connectivity problems, it may help to turn off the video. So I mentioned already, you're all put on mute, but we are going to have some time for questions from the audience as well, of course. And the technical support will unmute you for any questions. So please feel free to either use the chat to mention that you would like to ask a question, or to use in the bottom menu beneath all the videos, you have a button called reactions, and that allows you to raise your hand. So if you click on reactions, or in German Reaktionen, you will find a button to raise your hand. As the screen gets fuller, pictures also move on to the next slide. So I won't always be able to see everybody. So this is the best function, because if you raise your hand like this, I may not be able to see it. But as I said, you can also use the chat either to ask questions in the chat if you don't want to ask them verbally, or just mention that you would like to ask a question. The room will also be open afterwards for any questions you may still want to discuss after 2:30 p.m. You are more than welcome to stay. I can only speak for myself, not for all the guests, so I'm not sure how long they will be able to stay, but the offer is there to also talk in the group afterwards. And moreover, the event platform, as you may have already discovered, itself offers opportunities to meet with other participants, and you can find more information about it in the FAQ on the event platform. So, Alexander, is there any news about Genet, or should we just get started as we are now?
So good morning, everybody, and Demena Deracho. Some of you saw me before. So I don't know where Paradise is. I don't know where Genet is right at the moment. I don't know. Maybe Juliane, you have some information about her. I sent her, I resent her the link, the direct Zoom link, plus the access code. Maybe she's joining while discussion. Because we changed to English for her, maybe she's on the phone. Juliane.
No, hi, good morning. I will quickly call her.
Okay, I tried to call her, but maybe you have another number or a better access. Just keep on trying. Yes.
Yeah.
And so you started in English, so you can continue but maybe also change back to German because we did that for Genet. But I saw some participants, I think from the embassy, so it would be nice for them if we stay with English. I think so. Decision of the panel, I say. I will listen. Just listen. I have some textile experience. Maybe I can bring it in this discussion if I'm here. But I see others with plenty of experience in the field of textile, like Beate Wiedeken. So let them join into the discussion, so the quality will increase more and more. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Alexander. So I think we may have an update now from Juliane.
Yes, Janet is coming in now. So
perfect.
I sent it to her on WhatsApp again, and she will come straight away. So I don't know what happened
perfect.
there.
Yeah, then we will just wait another minute. And thank you all very much for your patience. So, I mean, these online formats still, even though we've been working with them for a year now, sometimes still pose some challenges. But it's good to have so many people. So we're 28 people now here, which is great. And I'm really looking forward to a lot of discussion. So just let me also, while we're still waiting for Janet, give you a brief overview on how we thought this panel could work. So I will just quickly give an introduction of all our 4 panelists, and we will get started with some short introductory statements from each one of them, but not too long. And then we thought about discussing 3 topics, which is like the general issue of textile industry in Ethiopia, then the impacts of the COVID-19 crisis and the conflict in Tigray on the Ethiopian textile industry, and then also discuss the road ahead, what can be done to improve sustainability along the textile supply chain, and what are visions and ideas for the future. And I think it would also just be great to get a really interactive discussion here. So please feel free to jump in, ask your questions on the chat, or raise your hand and make any comments or questions you also have to our panelists. Yeah. And in case you are having any technical issue, we also have someone from the technical support with us. So please just pose any technical questions also just in the chat, and then okay. Yeah, I think we're still waiting for Janet, but then I would just get started slowly by introducing the 3 guests we already have here. It's a pleasure to welcome all of you in this virtual platform event. And I would like to give a special welcome to Juliane Kahl from the Responsive Fashion Institute, who is here with us today, to Stefan Rielen from Gesamtmasche, and to Uli Plein from GIZ and the Green Button. I will also introduce everybody in detail in a few moments. And while we're still waiting for Janet, I will just give a brief thematic introduction, and then we can get started into discussion. So when preparing for this panel, I was also thinking, do I have anything produced in Ethiopia in my closet? And then I remembered I have this pair of shoes that is produced by a small German Ethiopian startup located in Hamburg, and their production is in Ethiopia. And yeah, I think this is symptomatic for more and more customers finding tags written made in Ethiopia in their clothes. So the Ethiopian government is putting high hopes in the garment sector, wanting to construct around 30 industrial parks until 2025 that are supposed to provide at least 350,000 jobs and to bring up the country's industrialization. So while some argue that these highly modern industrial parks where they produce textiles can be a future model because they provide a secure working environment and really on the edge of current state of the art, so to say. Workers and human rights organizations also have expressed their criticism and their concerns on the extremely low wages that are far away from a living wage that could provide for a living and a livelihood for families, and also the exploitative working conditions. So as early as 2018, as far as I know, there have been workers' strikes against the conditions in in these industrial parks and the textile factories. And in German TV in 2019, a documentary by Report Mainz also revealed the poor working conditions and low wages in factories. And these factories being supported by the German government and the European Union, and a location where major brands such as H&M started producing their clothes. So in this panel, we would like to follow the traces of the Ethiopian fashion industry to explore the role of different stakeholders, such as the German government and the GIZ, but also the role of enterprises, both in Germany and local enterprises, and also to take a look at ideas and visions of how things could be done differently in a more sustainable way. So I think I will just get started. I was going to start with an introductory statement by Janet, but then I will just give the word to Juliane. So Juliane is a fashion designer and researcher focusing on the future of fashion. Her main interest is the development and application of new technologies to promote sustainability. And in 2016, Juliane Kahl initiated the first fashion hackathon in East Africa in Addis Abeba. And the project received the Better Life Award of the London College of Fashion. So Juliane, I would like to know, what is your perspective on the Ethiopian textile industry? Where do you see it in terms of sustainability or repeating old mistakes? And just quickly before I give the word to you, I think Janet is with us now. A very warm welcome to you. It's great to have you here, and we will just let you settle in here while Juliane is the first one to give us a short introduction from her side.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me okay. Thank you for the Verein as well. Thank you for the invite. I'm very happy to have the chance to talk here today. And as you said already, we're researching the future of fashion. So we're really looking at the impact of sustainability, of new ways of making things, new ways of business models. And I started my research from a personal interest because I have a godmother from Ethiopia, and I always really wanted to go there and see really what the country is like. And I did my first research project at London College of Fashion when I did some postgraduate research there, and then I found out about this development of the fast fashion company moving into Ethiopia and establishing it as a new place for manufacturing. And I'm a businesswoman. I founded this company, but I'm also an activist. And I think anything related to fashion is fantastic because it involves important stakeholders and important politics. It's a great facilitator to empower communities, empower people. And it's also great because everyone from us is involved because we're all consumers as well. So with every euro or every beer we spend, we can really have an impact and change something. And we know from research, we know from the media that there's been loads of things that gone wrong in fashion since the very beginning, but particular since the 2000s with the development and the so-called fast fashion companies. So we really try to implement systems or exchange knowledge about other ways of doing things and other ways of establishing new models and making new things. And we particularly, and we talk about that probably later when we focus on COVID, we see now that there's a really big change in supply chains, what happened with the current pandemic. And we really see this situation as a possibility to really push for changes that are really holistic, that are really have a full perspective of sustainability from a human side, the social side, the economic side, and also the ecological side, so the pollution side. So in that sense, I think it's a fantastic way to look at Ethiopia and really see what can be implemented there, what we can work together. You know, we can bring all the stakeholders at a table. And again, I think part of this is really great to have a conversation with different stakeholders and really try to make sense of it all, because I think fashion is a wonderful thing and fashion is fantastic, and it's a great way to do things, to make things, and to display yourself. And I think we can all do it better on all ends. So I think it's great to have this. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Yeah, you gave some important keywords that will probably lead us directly to someone who is really from the industry, who is trying also a different approach. So I'm very happy that you are with us today, Genet. Genet Kebede is the founder and creative director of Paradise Fashion Ethiopia. And she founded the label in 1992. And since then, the label and the people behind have been celebrating the cultural tradition of Ethiopian hand weaving with both a contemporary design aesthetic and providing sustainable employment to the largely female team. So with Genet, we really have a pioneer in Ethiopian fashion here, a brand that has been built up from scratch and provides livelihood to a network of over 55 Ethiopian women who work for Paradise Fashion, and with their skills and with their art preserve and enhance the country's rich Ethiopian textile heritage. So a very warm welcome to you. I hope you can hear us. And I would like to know from you, from your perspective, what are the main challenges you see when looking at the Ethiopian textile production, but what is your approach and how do you try to make things differently? So welcome to you.
Thank you. Hi, good afternoon to all of you. Thank you for this opportunity. It's really a pleasure and an honor to be part of this panel discussion, which I really take to my heart. Because when I start my business, the core thing for me was the Ethiopian textile. The hand-woven textile. I work a lot, almost 99% with Ethiopian hand-woven textile. And I'm fine, with this pandemic. It has been a big hit for us, but we try to survive, and I hope we will go through this pandemic. But to give just a small perspective on the textile industry, especially on the hand weaving, from my side, I have been doing a lot of research, a lot of trainings, and so many things to improve the textile industry when it comes to the weaving. But there is a big gap when it comes to the value chain, especially when it comes to the raw material sourcing. We have a very huge gap in Ethiopia. Now, even it is the worst time since I start my business, because there is no cotton, so there is no yarn, there is no quality of yarn. So that is really reflecting a lot in the fashion industry, especially. Because fashion is in trend, fashion is beauty, fashion is everything. So we're not able to design or promote different kind of textiles that we have in the weaving sector. So the value chain is really, really is a big deal to go through all the value chain and control it to do the complete design. So when I come to the textile, the industrial part of the textile, most of the factories now, they are close to the textile industry. I think GIZ knows very well, because GIZ has been in the back of this process for many years. I know GIZ that has worked so much to the Ethiopian textile industry, has contributed so much, the hand weaving textile, the garment industry, and also the other textiles. So the textile industry has a really big gap in getting the highest quality of fabric. So we couldn't be competitive in the markets. And that is one of the biggest gap that I find, because we can have the most beautiful products, but when you don't have variety of yarns and variety of fabric by itself, I mean, that is the biggest gap. And I'm working every time to use whatever I have, being innovative and try to be sustainable. With our weavers, for example, we're not able to hold all the weavers. You were saying, like, I used to have 55 people, but I don't have them anymore. I'm sorry to say that. It's because of the pandemic and because of we don't have the export that we were expecting. And even the local business is completely dead. Honestly, I don't see where we're going in the next 1 year. I'm very positive. I'm trying to do all what I can in my side, because I don't want to give up. I want to work and take my people behind to continue working. But the textile industry need really a big force to change things. So we can continue more later, or maybe with more questions and other discussions. So that's the way I see it. Right now, there is a huge gap for the value chain.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think you mentioned some really important issues, and we will definitely come back to some of the questions and aspects you raised. Before going a bit further into also the situation with the pandemic, I would like to hand over to Uli Plein, who's here with us from GIZ, and you already mentioned the work of GIZ in Ethiopia as well. And Uli Plein used to work for GIZ directly in Ethiopia as a program director, and he's now currently working with the Green Button, which is a governmental certificate for sustainable fashion. We will also talk about the Green Button a bit further on, I think. But for the first question, I would like to know, so what is the work GIZ has been doing in Ethiopia? How do you see the development of the textile industry in Ethiopia from your experiences?
Thank you, Miriam, and good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can hear me well. I'm currently sitting in Berlin, not in Ethiopia, so I have been working in Ethiopia for 14 years, supporting the textile and garment sector, starting in 2006, mainly with the quite poor garment sector and with Ethiopia with a long tradition, like Kenneth already mentioned it, on hand weaving. But we understood, or Ethiopian government at that time wanted us to support their ambition to bring Ethiopia into the textile and garment world. And we have been facing many challenges, and we tried to help Ethiopian industries, the local industries, to overcome them. So mainly the problems were within the companies that, like Kenneth also mentioned it, no raw materials were available, and if available, very expensive. Most of the products, accessories and any raw materials have been imported mainly from Asia, from China, no forex available. So it needed a long time to be able, for instance, to produce samples. If you have an international customer and they require samples, the sample production in Ethiopia took more time than the normal production period would have been to finalize the goods and deliver them. So Ethiopia was never competitive. And we tried to support in many ways. And I do believe a breakthrough, even though we also heard that, Miriam, from your side in the beginning, there are some challenges and there have been difficulties, but a breakthrough has been definitely, from my point of view, the development of setting up these industrial parks and bringing also international companies to Ethiopia, because that at least created the possibility to have some raw materials, some technologies, some machine equipment available. But one of the major problems, and we might be able to talk about that later on, was definitely that with that measure, the local industry has been left behind. So I do believe that government, from that time I was following it, I could say, was taking wrong measures when it comes to supporting local industries. They were only looking at export industries. They were eager and happy to convince international investors to come to Ethiopia. They offered them conditions which local companies never had in a similar way. And the local industries have been left behind. And I do believe this needs to be corrected. I do believe that also hand weaving and the, let's say, the small companies, the even micro companies working on fashion brands, small companies like Gannett doing big efforts are very important for the country. But for the economic development at all, if the country wants to really continue with the textile and garment sector, it needs international investments, it needs local bigger investments, it needs participation on international markets, on export markets. And here are still many of the old mistakes when it comes to economic development of the sector are still existing. But we will also talk later about environmental and social challenges which are still there and which need to be overcome to make the sector in Ethiopia more sustainable.
Thank you very much, Uli. So now we also have with us Stefan Rielen, who is a textile consultant with more than 10 years of experience working in Ethiopia, and he's also responsible for the project partner Africa Ethiopia, which is a project by the Confederation of the German Knitting Industry, Gesamtmasche, and the Ethiopian Textile and Garment Manufacturers Association. And they are trying to promote and strengthen the German-Ethiopian business textile partnership. So, Stefan, from your perspective, what can you tell us about the textile industry in Ethiopia and how it has developed over the past years?
Yes, first of all, hello to everybody. My name is Stefan Rielen, as you mentioned already. Yes, I'm working already over 40 years in the textile and garment industry around the world, in previous times in Asia, and since 12 years now in Africa. We do also some projects together, Uli Blein and me, in Ethiopia. From the first view, when I come first time to Ethiopia, I was really wondering that somebody has the idea to establish there a garment and textile industry. Because as we learned already from the other speakers already, the supply chain for all what is needed for a good garment industry is missing. So, I mean, in Ethiopia, they have to start on the end already with the final factories and not with the supply chain which feed the factories. Anyhow, is it like it is? There are a lot of opportunities in Ethiopia because one is very good. They have their own cotton production there. But what is missing is that they are handling the cotton with international standards. Yeah. And also the cotton fields and the cotton farmers are not growing in the same way like the garment industry. So now this season we have, as Gannett says already correctly, now in this season we have a big gap because there are a lot of cotton is missing. Because they have, in the rainy season, they have some cotton fields floated in big areas in Amara and also in Awash. Some cotton fields are overfloated and they are producing good quality cotton. So, but this is not only the cotton. I mean, who is in the garment industry? Everybody knows there are a lot of more steps until a garment is finished. So you need colors, you need buttons, you need sewing thread, and so on and so on. And all these things are missing. as Uli said already, the good news was that the industry parks are coming up, and a lot of foreign companies are joining Ethiopia, and they bring also some supply chain to Ethiopia, and they give also the contacts to the other people. But at least the focus from the Ethiopian government was always on export. And normally it should be go in the other way around. Normally an industry should be, first of all, feed the local market, that the people are well trained and people learn how to handle it, because normally the local market will accept some small or little mistakes. The export market will not accept any mistake. Number one. And number two is, as we learn now also in the project with the Gesamtmasche, that the factories, they are fully owned by Ethiopian people. They still have, after, I mean, they are now all 10, 15 years in the business, they still have problems to handle international orders and to handle international requests, and to find also quality standards in their factory that they can satisfy the international buyers. But anyway, as I said already before, there is still a big opportunity for them, and there is still a chance to join the textile market, especially now in the situation what we have with the pandemic. Even in Germany, a lot of people are thinking about, is it still good that we have our factory and our suppliers in China or in India or whatever, because they are not following the rules. And so I think this is not only for Ethiopia, I think this is a big opportunity for whole Africa, especially for these countries. They have cotton in the country, and they have a small textile industry already, because I think in this case there will be a gap will be open for them to say, okay, we do it in another way. We do it sustainable, we do it transparent, and if you want, you can have also the traceability. And I think these are the three topics which will be upcoming very soon in Germany, in Europe, and on the international markets. And also when we see that a lot of the big brands, they are say, okay, we are not like to use any conventional cotton with a lot of pests inside and contaminated. We are concentrate us on the organic cotton market. We are concentrate us on PCI cotton and so on. And for this, I think this is a good opportunity that Ethiopia and also other African countries can come up, and they have a chance to jump with a clean production and with clean cotton on the world market.
Thank you. Yeah, so you already mentioned some of the opportunities you see ahead for the Ethiopian textile market. And I think all four of you mentioned a lot of topics that are so interesting, and I would like to dig deeper into all of them. But first, before also coming to the current situation with and the impact of the pandemic, I would like to just go back one step, and because you also all sort of mentioned the dilemma between having like an industrial approach to the textile industry and these huge industrial parks that have been developed, also with the aim of enhancing the country's industrialization. But on the other hand, as you mentioned, Uli, there has been a neglect of local business and the local industry. So I would like to go a bit back into the roots of the textile industry, or like this industrialized approach to the textile industry in Ethiopia, and this dilemma of whether it can be like a stepping stone for economic development, or whether it's like prone to be an industry that will exploit people and and also the environment. So there's a lot of ecological aspects to it, of course, as well. So maybe Janet, what from your perspective would be needed to support enterprises like yours and to support like the local industry? And do you feel like there is any movement towards supporting more local business, or is everything around governmental policies more revolving around the industrial approach to textiles?
You are asking a very tough question, but I would like to go back. Uli has been here for 14 years. I'm really happy to see him because he has worked so hard on this sector and he knows exactly what I'm talking about. From the government, I mean, there are a lot of supports more on the side of talking, not on the side of implementing it, because there is a huge gap that is not yet filled. I think there is a saying in Ethiopia, you know, we always want to run faster. We think we can arrive without seeing what are the inputs we have to do to arrive to that goal. You know, we have a goal, a big, huge, ambitious goal, doing all these industrial zones, neglecting all the small like mine. I mean, I have been there 28 years, but I didn't grow like the way I supposed to grow, because the government focus on the big industry, because they always focus exporting, getting more foreign exchange, extra, which is fine. But if they don't support us, which are the one that we have really a lot of people behind us, I mean, the industry, it will always have a problem. I mean, we're talking the same problem 15 years ago, and we're still, I mean, even we're worse than what we were. I'm sorry to say it. I mean, sometimes I say it very truthfully, I'm a very positive person, but when it comes to this industry, when it comes to a small scale companies like mine, especially when it comes to a designing, when specifically small scale companies, there is nothing. I'm sorry. I'm still in a private house paying rent for the last 30 years. I'm trying my own way to support so many weavers, even though they are cooperative with the government, but they have a huge gap. They don't have receipts. So many, I mean, we can say so many problem things, but the positive part, there is the opportunity. What we can do to use that opportunity and fill that gap. But if there is no input, if there is no, I mean, if there is no all the inputs to make me reach where I want to reach, I want to be online, I want to be offline. I mean, it doesn't make any difference as far as I don't have nothing to design with. I don't have the proper machinery. I don't have the proper skilled people. I mean, we work with German companies where they bring at that time, Uli knows, their own experts that they teach us how to do an export shirt for ladies. I mean, we have been working with Italy. They brought in their own expert to teach us how. That is the gap that we need. We need to have experts to teach our people and to fill that gap and satisfy first the local market. Then we can move to the export market. Or parallelly, we can go if we are capable of doing what the export market is asking us. So, I mean, for me, I am there. I'm doing my own thing for almost 28 years. I have done so much. I contributed a lot for this industry, but I didn't move or I didn't grow, like I didn't scale up like the way I wanted to scale up because of so many XYZ problems. But I didn't give up and stop. I tried to fight and move forward, and hopefully things will change. And now the pandemic has made a lot of problems, but I'm trying to really continue working. And it's really tough, you know, it's really tough, but let's hope for the positive and let's see the opportunity out there and let's try how to pursue that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing also your experiences. And I think that's really important. I would like to pose sort of the same question to you, Juliane, because you've been working in your fashion hackathons with also with local smaller brands. So what were the experiences you made, and how would you say could this be improved, or how could a more sustainable approach supporting the local fashion industry be introduced?
Yes, I think it's, I found some very willing or very hungry people who really wanted to work, who really wanted to establish their business, who really were really skillful and really interested in new technologies. Like we organized this hackathon and we hacked the zipper technology, because zippers are really difficult to get hold of in Ethiopia because they're 100% imported. So of course, there are loads of ways to design a garment without a zipper, but of course, it's great to have the technology, which is, you know, more accessible in other countries where it's not 100% import tax. But it's really difficult to get, and from my contacts with designers up until today or now, it's difficult to get information. You know, issues like the pattern cutting technology, like anything that's like skill sets that are for like international working methods, as Gannett is mentioning. It's not just the exporting, but it's about the designing the garment. It's about also different ways of, if you look at sustainable things, like how to design with like zero pattern that you don't have much cut-offs and leftovers. But it's also literature, you know, publications about sustainable fashion or about how to modern ways of designing fashion. You know, that's difficult to get hold of, and you can't do everything with PDFs or websites. You know, it's like a good source of a library that would be open accessible, I think would really be fantastic for designers. And workshops, again, you know, it's everyone is in a similar situation, and I think to peer up and to share resources, knowledges, you know, maybe to have joint workforces, joint dyeing factories. You can share workforces like weavers and things like that if you're not very busy than the other one. So it's like a peer exchange and knowledge exchange. And again, you know, I know loads of colleagues who work with Ethiopian designers as well, and who love to consume Ethiopian products, and just really to grow further together and really look at again this way how to try to make sense into this. And if we know that there's a problem with cotton, you know, what can be done, what can be maybe there are other ways to use other materials. Maybe, you know, we can learn how to upcycle what we have, you know, and really look at up-to-date ways of making things. And also, I think it's really interesting to hear that, you know, the whole, you know, interest of the economic development, that's been fantastic. And I just really think that the women have really been left behind, because I think the reason why the international companies are coming to Ethiopia is that it's the cheapest cost of labor in the global garment sector. And I think it would have been great if maybe some sustainable standards could have been implemented, like minimum wage or the SDGs. I mean, they were not really there when all of this has been established. But I think, especially now with everyone focusing more on sustainable issues and the great initiative of the green button, I think it's a really great chance to, through the pandemic, really adapt this industry to such standard that it's really a lighting tower, or like a really good example of a sustainable industry. Because I think now it's a time with all the new cards being mixed in a way to really see what's on offer and what makes sense, and to really have proof of that as well, and, you know, really see an improvement of everyone involved.
Yeah, thank you so much. You pointed out the issue of the extremely cheap labor or the low wages that are far away from providing for a livelihood for the people. And this has been like the criticism of many civil society and human rights organizations as well. So coming back to you, Uli, I was wondering, in how far has it been part of the program of GIZ to work on these issues from the very beginning, knowing from the mistakes that have been made in the textile industry, in other production countries, and in how far are there any, so to say, is there any leverage of pressuring for these human rights and workers' rights? And I was also wondering, because we also know from many other country context like Bangladesh, that also freedom of association is rarely ever guaranteed for the workers. Whether you could mention also about how this situation is in Ethiopia.
Yeah, thank you again. Maybe let me raise one other issue which has also been discussed, what kind of support the local companies would need or what was going wrong in the past. I think one of the main issues is access to finance in Ethiopia, especially for the small ones. The big industries, the big investors, they don't have that problem. They have foreign currency, they have enough money, and they get cheap loans from the Ethiopian government. But local companies, as land is not owned by private people, but it belongs to government, you cannot take a loan on the land which you have. You take a loan for the machines, but if you need any additional loan for working material, you have no guarantees. So that's a problem. And small companies are too small to get loans from the big banks. They can take it from microfinance institutes. They have to pay an interest rate between 20 and 25%. And that's killing them. That's simply not possible to do. And then on the other hand, the Ethiopian government in the past put high taxes on the import of raw materials and goods which are needed for garment production. You were only exempted from these taxes if you exported. So if you had an export order, you got a tax exemption, but due to the slow custom procedures, due to the long-lasting time until you get foreign currency, many times what happened is that you had an order and you could only fulfill it to 50%. And then on top of that, for the 50% which you were not able to deliver, but you have the raw materials which you don't use them anymore because they were for this special order, you had to pay a penalty because you imported goods duty-free and you didn't export with the same value duty-free. So there were some rules on behalf of government which were wrong. And we tried to address these challenges. You know, we are, as GIZ, we are a German state-owned non-profit making enterprise, but we are working with as partner organizations with the governments in the countries where we are being sent to. So in Ethiopia, our partner was the Ethiopian government. So for sure, we were not in a position to tell the government exactly what is wrong in a political way. We could only show them on a technical way what impact it would have. And at that time, Stefan was one of the experts which we made use of because he knew the sector. And we were working with the companies showing in practice where the challenges have been. And from that, government understood some of the challenges and tried to improve the situation. Maybe that's one thing, but still the challenges are high. Now, when it comes to, let's say, the social situation, for instance, of workers, I do believe in the past, when we started in 2006 supporting the garment sector in Ethiopia, as there were almost no international investors, the system was quite okay, even though not all the structures which we nowadays would assume to be in place have been in place in Ethiopia. But local companies do pay their workers better than international investors. They do care more because it's their people. There is some difference. But when it comes, for instance, to minimum wages or what we are discussing in the green button currently, like living wages, which is far beyond what minimum wages would be. And in Ethiopia, there is no minimum wage. It doesn't exist. It's an issue if you cooperate or work or support the Ethiopian government. You cannot go against the government. You can only try to develop things jointly with the government partners and the government organizations. And you have to see this issue also in the context of the development of the country. The wages in the textile and garment sector are not really lower than similar wages in other sectors. Let it be in agro-processing, let it be in the shoe production, in the very small pharmaceutical sector. It's a general problem of the country and not only a problem of the sector. So we were not able to do much except where we felt that we had a possibility to intervene is to improve the labor skills, and with having better skills, they could advance in their career and the overall improvement of the skills would also lead to higher productivity, which is extremely low in Ethiopia still, and would then help workers also to gain better salaries. So I do believe that this is a process which in a way, when you are supporting governments in their economic development, is not very easy to address. Now, being in charge of the green button in Germany, I would see myself or our program in a completely different situation. I don't know if it's the time now to talk about the green button, but the big difference, what the green button wants to achieve, is the green button addresses not the production companies in Africa or Asia. It does not address governments in these countries, but it is addressing brands and retailers in Germany, in Europe, and is demanding from them to, or I mean, it's not a mandatory certificate, so we cannot demand, but we are supporting companies that understand their how can I say, the responsibility they have to produce more sustainable, not only for consumers who are demanding sustainable produced products, but also for the people producing in the production companies to have a better life and to have a more sustainable work. So maybe I could elaborate more on that principle later on, but for now, I do believe that with the green button, we have a completely different approach on these issues than we did have before.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we will definitely come back to the green button in a bit. And I think it's a really important issue of also what can brands and retailers do, but also on the side of the consumers in Europe. I will just stick with this topic of the general challenges in the industry in Ethiopia for one more question to you, Stefan. As an expert in like the international textile industry, so now having heard this dilemma between like an industrial approach to textile industry that has been supported a lot by also the government regulations that you mentioned, Uli, and hearing about the situation of the local business. So in how far would you say international textile companies have this on their mind, or how far are there any movements or approaches to work with more local suppliers or local industries?
Well, yeah, I mean, even the international investors now in Ethiopia, at least they face the same problem like Kenneth says before. Yeah, because they have a production there, they need also a supply chain, but they cannot find. The only difference is that they have enough money, and they have also in the home country branches, and they can support the factory in Ethiopia with fabrics, with sewing thread, with needle, whatever you need to finalize the production. Even for my opinion, even the basic idea that more turnover and also more export, real export with higher value is going out of the country of Ethiopia is not realized, because what I see now in Ethiopia is that the international people in the factories in the industry park, they are producing there, but they only use the cheap labor costs from Ethiopia. But the final invoice to the importer or to the brand is not coming from Ethiopia, it's coming from the home branch. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think this was not the basic idea, and this could be not the basic idea. Anyhow, I mean, let me explain another thing. This is also a question to Kenneth. because what I see the last 12 years in Ethiopia, it is, when I compare it with when China established a market in 30 years or 35 years ago, or in the beginning in India, or in the beginning in Turkey, when there is a factory, they grab an order from an international customer, and they know already when they take the order, maybe this embroidery, I have not the machine, but all the other things I have, but they take the order and they use the embroidery machine from the neighbor to do the embroidery. And this was always a problem in this project, what we have, to link the local factories together. But maybe one is doing the yarn, the next one is doing the dyeing, and the next one may finalize the order. This, I think, this was, I cannot understand why they cannot handle these things. In India or in China, nobody will refuse an order because he has not the machine. He take it and say, okay, maybe a friend or a neighbor or somebody can connect me and finalize it.
Yeah, maybe Janet, I will also add my little question to it, and then we can also hear from your perspectives on this. And I was also wondering, yeah, since you've been working for the past 28 years now, so how has this more recent development of the past, like, let's say 12, 15 years had an impact on your work, and how, I mean, you already mentioned that there hasn't been much support and that you weren't able to grow the way you wanted to grow, but maybe you can also go a bit more into depth, or how would you say has the development impacted your work, and would you now, looking back, say it was a really bad decision, so to say, or do you see any way forward of combining both a support for the local industry and a more export-oriented industrialized approach?
Okay, I think the question is for me. For me, I could say there is a huge gap again between the producer and the value chain process itself. Like, to complete a complete garment, there are so many inputs, you know, starting the fabric, I mean, the design, the pattern cutting, the thread, the buttons, name it, all the input that you need is not here. I used to be, as a designer, better 15 years, 20 years ago than now. It is sad to say that for me, because the more the industry is growing, the gap is growing even much wider here. I think Uli knows what I'm talking, because he has been there 15 years ago. Let's say the simple Abujadi jerk, it was much high quality when it comes to, in terms of quality of fabric, yarn they use, than the quality of Abujadi that we're using today. This is a simple cotton, not carded, not the high quality. I'm talking the simple Abujadi jerk that we fabric that we used to use for doing different kind of garments, and even shopping bags to Italy, to Germany. It was a very high quality. Today, it is not there. Why? Because the yarn factory is not connected with the textile factory, and even they're closing most of the factories. I remember 10 years ago when ICA Addis opened, it was a huge deal in Ethiopia, because they do from the yarn to the finished product. In 10 years, they said they're bankrupted and they left. Okay, I'm sorry. I worked with them to do a collection for the Frankfurt Messe exhibition. They were the only company that they were high tech in terms of printing, in terms of fabric. We got it from Mekelle. Now the Mekelle fabric factory is closed. I mean, I can say so many things. In my experience, in 28 years, we go backward when it comes to the textile industry, not forward, because the government, if they don't change their policy and they don't start supporting the medium, small companies to go better to the next level. I mean, GIZ has worked so much in this industry. They are still trying to fill up gaps, but the government side is still naive because no, we want the export. Okay, you want the export, but if you don't have the proper value chain completed, how could you have the export? You build an industrial zone where you will have the buttons, the zip, etc., there, but it's not true. It is not there because the companies that they want to come and invest in Ethiopia, they don't get all what it is needed. The other things is like the import possibility. If I am using something imported from Germany, if it is a high quality, and if I have a customer who would afford to pay me that, why would I pay over 200% of tax on a fabric that I don't get in Ethiopia? Now, we can't do uniforms, for example, high standard uniform. We can't do curtains that they could have to be fire resistance, etc., with the international standard. We can't because we don't have it. So there is a gap between the government policies, the implementation, and the industry. And the associations are there, but they tried their best. I think Uli even knows better, the Garment Association. I have never been part of it. I don't want to be part of it because sometimes there is more talking than implementing things. So you move on, you do your own things, you remain small, until you survive, you survive. But if we don't filling up the input process, I mean, all the value chain has to be from A to Z connected. If it is an industrial zone for garment textile, it has to be completed. I mean, if I go now to Italy, to Prato, there are so many Chinese factories where they have everything there. I need the buttons, I go next door. I need the zippers, I go next door. I need the fabric, I go next door. I want to do a collection, I have all the information. There is an information center where you will get all the information. In Ethiopia, we don't have information. What there is not. I mean, I can't buy any more trade. Was the only factory that they supplied trade for us was a Nazareth textile factory, a Nazareth yarn factory. Now they don't have. People that they buy in advance, they hide it, they're selling it 3-4 times more for me. So I can't even do my local business. So, I mean, if we don't clean up from A to Z, the value chain, I mean, it's going to be, in 10 years from now, we're going to talk the same issue, even worse. I mean, I think 15 years ago is better, now it's getting worse. Why? The government has to be aligned with companies, I mean, with people like that they are there to help, the GIZ, USID, name it. There are so many associations and NGOs that they really want to support. But if they don't align with the truth that there is, maybe we're close, don't see 3 years from now, if things doesn't change, I think we're going to be shut down. That's the way I see it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you so much for your perspective.
I'm a little bit passionate when I talk. I'm sorry.
But that's just what we are looking for. And I think it's so important, all the aspects you mentioned. So I would like to hand over also to Uli again, and maybe adding the question in order to move on also a little bit onto the topic of the COVID-19 crisis. So as Kenneth said, you know, it would need like a cleanup from A to C, and how far do you see any chances in terms of that, Uli, and how do you think has the COVID-19 crisis impacted the textile industry, and in how far could this crisis be a chance to make things differently?
Yeah, thanks again. A little bit difficult for me to answer this question because I left Ethiopia about a year ago. So I really don't know how the current situation in the textile sector in Ethiopia is. But when it started, we, at least from the German government side, from German Development Corporation side, tried to implement measures to support the local companies as well as the international companies to overcome or to survive during this crisis. At that time, nobody was expecting that it would take that long. But let me just briefly explain why we wanted also to support the international companies and what we tried to implement for that. Local companies, it's very clear. They need support. You need support for the local people, local investors, and so on. They don't have international backing. The big brands investing in Ethiopia, in principle, they do have their own backing. So we did not support the investors as such, but we did try to support the workers who are working for these international investors. So the initial idea, for instance, in that context was that we wanted to allow those workers who have been set free and have been sent home to produce face masks in a kind of homework, and we started a training of hand stitching, and we started to prepare materials and everything which was needed, and we wanted them to produce masks which have been highly needed and to distribute it to the people in the rural area, which normally would not have access to such kind of protection equipment. So that was an initiative which in the end was working out differently because some other development partners have been heavily financing the industrial parks and the workers, but we at least have been trying to support them by continuing their work and not just by giving them money for waiting until the crisis is over. A second issue where we felt we could also use a little bit this pandemic as a chance, as an opportunity to support the sector was the idea, and I think Stefan can mention more about it because he's more involved in that, was the production of so-called bamboo folding beds, where we wanted to use the local bamboo to import African cotton, which till then never happened in Ethiopia, and to support small companies to produce these beds, and the beds were meant to be sent to the rural area again for hospitals or health stations, which might have a problem with too many people being infected by coronavirus, and the health stations not being able to cover all these people. So that was the idea behind, and so what we tried is to help especially those who lost their income, who lost economic perspectives, to at least for a certain time to have a certain income and to be able to survive. But on the other hand, we also realized that international markets have been going completely down, and there was no demand from the international brands for production. So a lot of investors and also local companies producing for export have been struggling or are still struggling until today. And similarly, the fashion industry, the small fashion industry, which went for export, we did in the past take many of them to international trade fairs. We linked them up with international buyers, and all this currently is not possible. So I do believe that the sector, not only in Ethiopia, but especially in countries like Ethiopia and Ethiopia itself, is in a very bad condition.
So Stefan, maybe you could also add from your perspective and also about the project Uli mentioned, and how you or what you heard about the impact of the COVID-19 crisis on the situation in Ethiopia.
Yes, I'm still in contact every day or every second day with Ethiopian companies and also with the GIZ office in Addis. For sure, the COVID is a big problem for them, and it's not easy to continue in the sector because number one, from outside, nobody is requesting orders at the moment because all shops in Germany, in Europe, or in other countries are closed, and this will be for the sector a big break. Definitely. On the other side, as I have mentioned before, there is also a big opportunity upcoming. Not this year. I think this will be start after the pandemic, yes, because many big brands, they start to think about it if the supply chain as existing is also good for the future. Even big brands like Adidas or something, they are checking now what sourcing opportunities they have, what new opportunities, and which supply chain is more matching to the future. And now, especially in Ethiopia, to come back to this bed project, it was really nice. I think, Uli, this was one of our last projects which we bring on the way. But it was a great idea to close the gap with the raw material in Ethiopia. Because, as I mentioned before, already there are a lot of African countries. They are already in the textile business. On the East African side, it's Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, and Ethiopia. On the West African side, there are a lot of more countries. They are in the cotton business. So that's why we take this opportunity to start with this Pan-African business connection, so that we say, okay, what is missing in Ethiopia? The cotton. Good. So now we take the cotton, a good quality from West Africa, from Senegal, and bring the cotton to Ethiopia and made out of this cotton these beds. I mean, not the full bed. The bamboo is coming from Ethiopia, but the fabric which is covering the bed is the cotton is from Senegal, but the fabric is made in Ethiopia. Yeah. And I mean, this program is working at the moment successfully. The yarn is spinned in Ethiopia. The fabric is, I said, 50% of the fabric is already finished, and we start last week already the dyeing process in another factory. And now even the guys from the official part, from the state minister and the people from Moti, they start to understand how we can build a supply chain, because now this was the first, one of the first official projects. In this case, there was no other opportunity to use several steps in the country. We give the cotton to one spinning company in Adama, and another factory is producing the raw fabric, and the next factory is doing now the dyeing and finishing of the fabric, and the next factory will now doing the sewing part. Yeah, and the next factory established a full bed. So I think I really hope that this is an example that the people learn, and the official people learn also. There is another opportunity. We can import the missing cotton from other African countries. This is number one. And number two, we can split with the opportunities what we have in our country. We can use this for a slowly upcoming supply chain. And I can really say, I hope this is a good learning effect for everybody, that this will continue. And now the people are thinking about and say, oh, yes, this is the missing part. This is like in a puzzle. Yeah? When you are looking for the missing part to fulfill this gap, when they understand this, that with the options they have in the country, at least they can start to run the business a little bit better than in the past time.
Yeah, thank you. So I would like to hand over to Juliane as well, and her perspective on the current situation, and maybe adding my question of not only looking at Ethiopia, but at the fashion industry as a whole, and also taking into account other countries that have been very heavily impacted by the COVID-19 crisis, especially due to the lockdown in Europe. We saw that textile supply chains were very little resilient, and that the effects on people, on the workers in this along the supply chain are just devastating. So yeah, how do you see the impact of the crisis on the fashion industry, and how do you think this could be a chance for change, and what needs to be changed in order for the supply chains to be more resilient, more sustainable, to be future-proof?
Yes, thank you. And very interesting points that you, Mr. Strehl, and Herr Plein mentioned before. If we look at the global perspective, we see really the COVID pandemic as a ground zero for fashion. And as you mentioned before, Miriam, all the supply chains completely collapsed, the shops are closed, every company that hasn't got any online presence completely had no income or no profits for months and months now, and it's not an end in sight, so to say. We've seen in Bangladesh that many large companies didn't pay the suppliers, so that they really left loads of manufacturers out of pockets. The workers weren't paid, and the materials that were bought already to manufacture those things weren't paid for either. So we've seen developments in England, in Great Britain, for example, that due to the lack of the connection of the supply chain and due to the speed that was necessary for the fast fashion there, we've seen a development of manufacturing in Leicester. And there were loads of scandals already because there were cost of labors, or they found illegal workers there that made like €1 or €2 per hour. So it was complete non-standards in the European context whatsoever, even though they're not in the EU anymore. But still, I mean, beyond anything that should be acceptable on a global scale. And it's great to connect and to really look at innovations, what can be done now in this new situation, and to really see what makes sense. And it's fantastic to see these initiatives to connect and to link different markets. But overall, even though cotton is this great source of material for the industry, we have to see if cotton is still so timely as well. And I think we should really put lots of effort into different alternative materials that don't need as much water, because as we know, water is a big issue. And to really start a conversation or an exchange of knowledge about innovative solutions that are timely and that are an alternative, that is a long-term alternative. Because in a way, we establishing industrial parks or big markets for an industry that's already changing so much. We see in Europe and in America, North America, that the markets are so saturated, so people don't buy as much as they used to do. We see this development of digital fashion, where really young people, loads of young people in Europe and North America just bought a really cheap product, a garment, put it on, made a photo of it, posted it on social media, and then they discharged it. So most of the garments weren't even worn 2 or 3 times. They were just chucked straight away. There's a huge problem with waste. So the whole market is so saturated, and we produce things in some parts of the world that are then just chucked away, disregarded, and then they end up in the second-hand donation market back in the garment. And the quality is so bad that you can't really make a living out of this in the second-hand value market in most places like Africa. So we need a reset, and I think this pandemic it's a call for action, and really say, sit at the table, let's consider what makes sense, what is timely, what do we want, what standards do we want, what is the material that makes sense, how can we treat it, how can we work on it together, and how can we make sense of it all. Because the connectivity is there, and we're just there that there's going to be a proof of concept, and the consumers or a very large number of consumers in Europe and in North America want to see that everything they buy, it's properly manufactured. And that's not exploiting the earth, it's not exploiting people, and that's a way that we lift people out of poverty.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so I see that we're already having a lively discussion in the chat, and before moving on to the next topic about what can be a road ahead, what can we do also as consumers, what can corporations and enterprises contribute, but could, and also to talk a little bit more about the green button that has been mentioned quite a few times already. I was just wondering whether any of the people discussing in the chat would like to bring up their comments. Ms. Parts, I was seeing your comments. Maybe you would like to just briefly comment for everyone, or ask a question to one of our panelists, and also everybody else. If you already have questions, please feel free to raise your hand or just unmute yourself. I think you can do so by clicking on the little microphone button in the very bottom left side of your screen. So please feel free to ask any questions you may already have.
Yeah, I made this comment in the chat. I don't know if I should. I just wanted to emphasize that I think for the Ethiopian government, it makes sense to promote the export because of our monetary system, our international economic system. I mean, they need to stabilize the currency, right? And that's why they need exports, and that's why they sort of subsidize the imports for the exports. Yeah, so it's actually, it makes more sense for them to have immediate production. You can't develop a cotton industry now from one day to the next. So they are importing cotton from India and so on. And for this textile industry, and I don't want to say that this is how it's supposed to be, but I mean, from the standpoint of the Ethiopian government, it makes sense in the first place. And this was just my comment in the chat.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I don't know if any of you four on the panel, we don't have like this real panel today, but if you would like to comment on it. I see Janet raise her hand, and then Uli Plein afterwards.
Okay, thank you. You know, I just want to add here on the topic about, I am not here like blaming the government or anybody else. It is all about the government has, I know, has its own need and getting more export markets, etc., which it needs money. It is very understandable. But at the same time, if I want to develop as a government the textile industry, what does it take to bring the small and medium industries to the next level, make them first functionable? I mean, we import in Ethiopia, I don't know in how many billions garment as of today, and instead of encouraging the local market to use what is possible and even to import in duty-free, wherever, to encourage the local industry to do, to supply. We have 120 million people in Ethiopia. I mean, so if we are not able still to satisfy the government, if you don't support me or any other like me, or even a little bit bigger than me, that they have 50, 60, 100 employees, I mean, what does it make sense only supporting the big industries because we have to export and bring foreign currencies? I am just saying, like, I want to make really serious this topic by saying we need to align, to work towards the all inputs to develop the industry, not putting it down from where it was. I mean, if I'm saying I was better 20 years ago or 15 years ago, I mean, I have my own reasons why I say that. It's not only me. There are so many like me, lot of designers that they really want to come into this industry, but there must be a support system, how to make them big. I mean, I think Korea has grown up like this, China, India, name it. Why not us? That is my question, and thank you for this opportunity again.
Thank you so much, Kenneth. Yeah, I don't know, Uliplan, would you like to add something to
Yeah,
that
very,
discussion as
very
well?
briefly. I do agree with what Lena said, but I also very much do agree with Kenneth's intervention. And I just want to remind that it's not about blaming government at all, but it's like you can do, there's a difference between you can do the right thing or you can do things right. And I do believe with the industrial parks, for instance, government did the right thing, but they didn't do it right. So they could have done better, and they could have not forgotten the local industries, the local market, the supply, the social aspect of the workers. I mean, thousands of workers have been sent to the cities from the rural area, and they had no space, no place to live. Issues which nobody would expect that could happen. How can you not expect that if you create an industrial park which should cover 60,000 workers and they come from all over the country? So what I want to say is like, we always have to try not only to do the right thing, but to do things in the right way.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I don't know if anybody else from the audience would like to pose a question. Please feel free to unmute yourself and contribute to the discussion. I don't see any. I see Juliani, you raised your hand as well.
Yes, I just wanted to add that, you know, these are challenging times for everyone, and on a personal level, on a business level, and, you know, it's not a blame game. You know, if you develop a new industry, you know, of course there are mistakes that happen, and but on the other hand, I think it's really about looking ahead and really seeing what's possibility and what can we learn from it, and what can we learn from it together, and really join forces. And you know, what's happened. So I mean, let's look in the future, and yeah, I think we have to adapt anyway. So, you know, try to make sense of it all.
Yeah.
There's also, I mean, we have proof, there's science that it really says it's nothing wrong with making huge amount of money with sustainability and with timely business models, because the consumer in Europe, in America, North America, they really are happy to spend a decent or proper amount of money on things when they know it's attached to this engagement or this impact or this story. But the story needs to be right. So it can't be greenwashing. It can't be just a green label on another blue background. You know, it needs to be fully transmitted and done. And if we have the technological possibility to track and trace that without greenwashing, I think we're just before the technology possibilities to do that. And I think then it's really a fantastic opportunity to really get things going.
Thank you. Gannett, I'm not sure whether your hand is still raised from your previous comment or whether you would wanted to say anything else. Otherwise, I would give the word again to Ms. Potch.
Yeah, I just wanted to emphasize that now with the pandemic, you would think that European consumers are more keen on getting cheaper clothes or so, but the opposite is true, yeah? So there's more demand now for organic and fair trade products, and yeah, and this is also something we should maybe mention, that there's more solidarity now with the pandemic.
It's not entirely, sorry if I just quickly answer that, it's a generation thing as well. And I think we see a generation, first of all, the kids that are on the street with Fridays for Future, so they are more aware of that, so they go more into secondhand. But the older generation, the non-digital natives, that definitely want to spend a decent amount of money. There's a section in between that wants quick fixes, and but we see this development now with the digital fashion, that we see a real opportunity that this digital fashion can really change or improve or adapt the fast fashion, or could be an alternative. And I mean, we're all sitting here, I mean, it's changing anyway. I mean, how much clothes do we need? That's what we realize as consumers as well. We have filled wardrobes, and do we need that much? Or is it possible to change it or adapt it? Or, you know, that's the thing as well. And I think that's something that needs to be taken into consideration into markets as well. If you developed or establish a big industry, you know, is there going to be a demand in the future? And we're not talking 5 years, we're talking like 10 years, you know, will we ever have this global fashion market in the long run?
Yeah, thank you so much. Janet, were you going to, do you want to add anything to that?
Okay, I just want to add, I mean, whatever we're thinking to improve this sector, I mean, I think each one of us has a responsibility to do our part. In my side, I mean, I'm trying to train more women, more weavers, and et cetera, but that wouldn't be the only way to be sustainable. If the background is not sustainable, I think it's going to be a hard time. So we have to work all the responsible government entity or private or anybody, associations or NGOs. We really need to put up a team and solve problems one by one. You know, slowly we can reach where we want to reach. But if we don't start cleaning it up, I mean, it's going to be the same problem again and again. So what I would advise is, like, let's all of us work. There is a reason why you put together today this meeting. So I think there is a huge reason why GIZ is there to help. So I think we need to pull in someone in the policy sector, the Ministry of Trade or any associations, that there must be a clean understanding how things has to go, not like the way they want it or the way I want it. It has to have a procedure how we can really move forward to get better in this industry and to be all of us beneficiary and to go to the sustainable goals that we all are trying to reach. You know, I think we are growing up very fast at the same time with the pandemic. There is a big frame. So let's work together. And I just want to say thank you for this opportunity. And if there is anything you need from my side in terms of information or with my knowledge, what I can do, I mean, I'm very positive, and thank you again.
Thank you so much. Yeah, the past few keywords were so important, and they lead me directly to a few more questions, especially on the topic of what can be done, what's the road ahead, what can we do on a political level, what can corporations do or companies, and what can we as consumers do. And we've talked a lot about the green button already. So I would like to go a bit deeper into that, Uli Plein, and maybe you can first give us a short introduction, because I'm not sure if everybody is aware what exactly is the aim of the green button, how does it work, what are the goals, and then and how far can the green button actually impact the situation, like in the production countries, and what kind of impact is wanted with the green button.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, the main issue of the green button, which is an initiative by German government, by our Minister of Economic Development, is to support the sustainability or the development of sustainability in the textile and garment sector. That's the main issue behind. And it's a kind of certificate which companies can get for compliance with certain environmental and social criteria. Environmental and social criteria on a product, let's say on a t-shirt or on a pair of jeans, but also criteria on the company as such. So with the green button, we do address, as I mentioned before, retailers and brands, starting from Germany, but mainly in Europe. We have just registered the green button in Europe. So it's an international recognized logo, and we are currently working on accreditation of the standard as an international standard. And we are working based on already existing standards like GOTS, GOTS, or Fair Wear, or Fair Trade, or Ökotex Step, and so on. So we try to be something which we call a meta label, where we do not want to investigate in the companies, in the production companies as such, and do audits there, but we do want to rely on existing labels which we do believe are fulfilling already high standards, and we want to close the gap between those labels and the gap to a sustainable approach in all issues. So where GOTS, for instance, is mainly looking at organic cotton and the production of organic cotton, we also have now accepted a label which is a recycling standard for recycling products. Or where Oecotex step is mainly looking on the environmental part, we do combine that then also with some other social labels like fair trade, for instance. So what we want to do is we want the brands and the companies in Europe to take their responsibility to make sure that products which they sell in the market and which they label with the green button are produced in conditions which we call social and environmental sustainable, based on OECD requirements. I will maybe very briefly try, if that works, to share my screen. I just took some slides from our homepage green button. You can see we have we do a company audit, not the production company, but the company which is retailing or which is holding the brand, and we do product audit. And this will take us to the label green button. And then you can see here we have environmental criteria which are well known, and behind that we have different, I think 26 different criteria. It's how to handle hazardous chemicals, it's the wastewater treatment, it's pollution, it's natural fiber, and so on. And we do have similar criteria in the social context. And if I now come back to your initial question on this session, sustainable textile sector in Ethiopia are old mistakes. If you look into this criteria, anybody in Ethiopia could see whether they are on the way to more sustainability or whether they are still making the old mistakes. And we basically, with the green button, do believe that the sector can change. That's also what has been mentioned before. There's a higher demand for sustainable produced garments. And with that, consumers in Europe will, with their behavior of what good they purchase, they will have an impact on how the production situation will be in countries like Ethiopia, but also other countries. And this is just again to show you what we expect from those brands as a company as such. They have to analyze the risks of production throughout the supply chain. They have to report on it. They have to take action. They have to present which action they took and what the result of these actions is. And they have to take complaints very seriously. So maybe this is just a very brief introduction. I can only invite you to have a look at our homepage, grüner Knopf or green button. And whoever wants to contact me, I'm very much interested to give you further information on that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I would just like to know, so when the green button was introduced in 2019, a lot of civil society and human rights organizations and organizations that have been working for more human rights, for the implementation of human rights and decent working conditions, and also in terms of ecological standards in Germany and internationally, like for example the Clean Clothes campaign, have criticized the initiative of the green button, or not the initiative itself, but the implementation, more to say, of the green button, as it initially didn't cover, for example, the entire supply chain. As far as I'm informed, could you tell us a bit, how is this going? Is there any further development in terms of extending it to the entire supply chain? Because other certificates like GOTS are already like working in the entire supply chain. And in how far is the demand of reaching living wages in a part of the green button?
Yeah, indeed. I mean, the green button has been launched in September 2019, and at that time it was a certificate which completely referred to existing labels, and we knew that the start was not very easy, and it was fast, but it was politically set. So our government, our ministry wanted to do something, wanted to show that action needs to be taken. And immediately, even with the launch of the green button, we started working on what we currently call the green button 2.0, which is a new version, which I mentioned will also be internationally accredited. This is what we're working for, but we'll also look deeper into the supply chain. Before, it was only, the green button was only considering the garmenting and the dyeing, and not all the other areas, which now more and more will be included. And the criteria will increase. We, for instance, when it comes to this company criteria, we had criteria which said the company have to be aware of the issue of living wages. And now we expect them, but it's still under discussion. We expect them to at least come up with within the next, or within the first 3 years of implementation of Green Button 2.0. We expect them to come up at least with some implementation in one of their main production sites. So we do believe that further action needed to be taken for the green button. We do understand the criticism, but we still do believe that currently the green button is one of the best certificates which exist in the market, and it's based on the existing, or on some very what we think high level existing certificates. So it's a continuous improvement process, and just to come back to the issue of living wages, I mentioned it before, Ethiopia is not even having minimum wages. How can you discuss living wages? The second question is, how much do local companies really do have a possibility to have a serious impact on living wages in their production countries? But we want them to, as much as it is possible, to take this responsibility and to be aware and to introduce measures. But we also have to understand that currently there's no other certificate that is already implementing something like living wages. It's currently not there. And we at least want to address this issue. It will not be that the green button after 2-3 years will make sure that every T-shirt or every product which has the certificate will be produced by paying living wages. Definitely not. But we want to make sure that at least those companies who are part of the green button will take measures towards living wages, and will show concrete measures in the future, so that the sector will move at least.
Thank you. Yeah, we have a question on the green button as well in the chat, and I think it may be directed to you, Uli Plein, but also maybe Gannett. We can hear your perspective on this as well. So the question is there any Ethiopian company which would fulfill the criteria of the green button, and is it not making the challenge to reach the international market harder for smaller companies, or is it an alternative way, or is there any alternative way to support them?
So first of all, I have to explain again that we are not, or the green button is not a certificate given to companies, to production companies, but to brands and retailers. So the question would rather be, is there any brand or retailer who has the certificate of a green button and gets his products from Ethiopia? And members, for instance, just I mean, you might know the ones who are coming from this, let's say, sustainability sector, Hess Natur. They do not produce in Ethiopia. Bigger ones, discounters like Aldi, Lidl, Rewe, they are member. Chibo, they are member. Chibo did have a production for a long time, not its own production, but it has been mentioned before by Gennett through ICA Addis. So there were brands which already do produce in Ethiopia, but they currently do not produce products which hold the green button label in Ethiopia. But I do believe it would be possible, and we are currently now from the Green Button Secretariat, which I am heading in Germany, starting also cooperating with companies in production countries in Bangladesh and Pakistan, but also in Ethiopia, to support production companies so that they could be a choice for green button holders, brands or retailers with as a green button holders in Germany. So I do believe some companies would already right now be able to very much fulfill the requirements on behalf of the brands and the retailers. But here again, it's not the local companies that will be certified. It will be the brands and the German or European retailers being certified. And they have then to make sure that the requirements are being fulfilled in the production where they get their products from. Also making sure that it's not only about putting these requirements in their terms for the t-shirt or for the trousers which they want to be produced, but to report as a company what exactly they are doing, how they analyze risks, and how they support overcoming this risk. What is the brand Chibo, for instance, doing against sexual harassment if it comes up in the company where they do produce? So it's really making brands responsible for what's going on in production companies, and through that and through the pressure of consumers in the end help to improve the social and the environmental standards and situation in the sector.
Thank you. Yeah, Juliana, I saw your hand. Maybe you would like to add to the discussion.
Yes, thank you. And congratulations to the Green Button. I think it's a great initiative to really move this whole issue of sustainability in all aspects really to a big domain and really place it with the companies. I just want to emphasize again, the industry as it stands before COVID and maybe before the 2000s, it was so easy to make so much money with garments. And I think there's, just as a reminder, there's nothing that stops a company to pay more than is legally necessary. And there's nothing more that stops a company and say, we do things better because it's better, as we know that the consumers really open their pockets now to clothes with impact and with the proof that they get impact for that, to really have this connection. It could be through social media, it could be through blockchain, track and trace. There's so many opportunities now to really say, we do it better and we don't want to support the system anymore. And if we look at it's up to date with all the public discussions about, you know, the richest man or the second richest man is the owner or the CEO of Mango and Zara, you know, and there are very few, sorry to say, but rich old men, and there's so many women in the supply chain in the development countries or in the countries in the global south. Even that is not really correct way to say it now, but you know what I mean. So it's really this whole shift of money and profits isn't really up to date anymore. And we're not even talking about the ecological way, we're talking at the social way as well. And again, there's nothing that stops a company to do better that's required and to do better that's on offer. And I think the Green Button, it's a great initiative to really emphasize it and to inform the consumer as well what is possible and what are the critiques. I think the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, are fantastic in that sense as well. I'm just worried that it's not being used as a greenwashing method by companies, but I think in general it's a fantastic way. And don't forget, you can always do better. And I think there's nothing that stops you to do better. It's a decision, and it's a decision from the very top. And every CEO who wants to continue selling clothes, you know, he or she can really do a change with changing things, because it's in the end, it's just about money, and it's about the margin that you get as a company. And maybe it's not as easy to make as much money as it used to be, but it was crazy amounts of money that were made there. So give a bit up on that share and you can sell so much more things. Don't underestimate the power of that message and of that story and of that trust that you create between the consumer and the manufacturer and the brand.
Yeah, I think that's an important aspect because I, for myself, for example, working mostly like in educational programs and trying to raise awareness among like young people on these issues, we always find ourselves confronted with the question of, but there is so many labels and there's so many certificates, which one to trust, and rather trying to make a whole different approach for the entire industry is, I think, an important way forward. So I see your hand raised, Uli, and then maybe I would also be really interested to hear from you, Gennett, afterwards, your perspectives on how do you see these initiatives from like more the brands and retailer side, or the countries essentially buying in the international textile market, and how would you say this could be having a positive impact? Yeah, but first you, Uli, with your hand raised, and then Gennett.
Thank you. I would just like to reply to what Juliane said, or to add on that. Because I mean, we all know that labor cost is the smallest part of the cost of a t-shirt. So that would not make very much of a difference when it comes to the production cost. I don't know how currently the salaries have developed in Ethiopia. I mean, in the past year, what I remember is that the exchange rate almost has doubled. Yeah, a year ago, €1 was 24 birr. Now it's, yesterday I heard it's 48. So I'm wondering, did the salaries also double in that time, or did they not? But I also want to emphasize that this is not only a decision of one company making a big effort, because it's an economic issue for a country. In Ethiopia, as I mentioned in my introduction, the salaries in the textile sector are not really lower than salaries in many other sectors for workers, unskilled workers, workers who have not gone to a training center, to university, but they just have learned their skills within the company in 6 weeks of training. These salaries are like on a national level, more or less similar to many sectors. Now, it would not help if you increase the salaries by 10 or 15%. I mean, it's nice to have, but that's not what would bring workers to have a living wage. Far from that. There's a calculation by, I think it was the Fair Wear Foundation, that says that living wages in Ethiopia would be around 7,000 birr per month. 7,000 birr per month is the current salary of an engineer in Ethiopia. And we have to understand, that it's not just like by saying, okay, let's double the salaries in our factory or in the factory where we produce, and then everything is fine. But this is an issue which needs much more. It needs political talks. It needs, and I think this is very much important, the permission, for workers to join, worker representatives to join working unions. It has to start from there. It has to create an awareness. It has to allow workers to go on strike, which Miriam, you mentioned that there have been strikes in the industrial parks. Before that, I think the country didn't know what a strike is, and they didn't know what bargaining mechanisms in the textile sector could look like. So I do believe that, yes, in principle, definitely it would be possible. And yes, these very few rich men, they could share part of their profit and pay better salaries. But to come to arrive to something which is called not only minimum wages, but living wages, it needs a political process. And we do hope with the Green Button that at least we create the awareness in the in the European countries, that they can also be part of initiating this.
Can I just add something to that? Yes, I think it's, I completely agree, but what I can say that is possible for brands that they say, you know, I provide maybe more or additionally more than money. I mean, what about social services, so to say? So like if there's, you know, childcare involved, maybe it doesn't cost the world to have childcare facilities next to the manufacturing. I mean, we know from the Stern report from Stern University in New York that, you know, loads of these workers, they had problems to get to work. You know, they were living very far away. There was issue with security there. They were robbed there. There was some other not very nice things. So it's really about making it safe to work, on making it a good place to work. And yes, there's the political rights that you can demonstrate, that you can make that you can unite yourself, but also, I mean, the social aspects. I mean, is it possible to get to work in time and still get something to eat afterwards? Or is it safe what type of transport does a worker need to get from A to B and things like that? So I think just really, I think as a brand, you can say, listen, I want to make sure that there's a good transportation, or there's childcare. Have the women time to even meet people. Maybe if they work 7 days a week, they don't even have time to start a family. So it's like, you know, all these social aspects that doesn't cost the world for brands.
Yeah, and would really provide for like a more holistic approach, taking into account the people actually working in the supply chain, right? Yeah, Gannett, I would be really interested to hear your perspective and how far is any of this development about the green button, for example, perceived in Ethiopia, and what do you think of it? And would you say, or what would be needed from your perspective in terms of change in the brands and the retailers, but also on behalf of the consumers in Europe?
Okay, for me, I see a very huge opportunity out there right now, because the green button, as I understand for what Uli explains, is an opportunity for brands like me also. And I think if green button wants we identify, let's say, small companies, how we can go through the process to be able to deliver or to sell my product to a company which is a retailer in Germany, I mean, it is a win-win situation. I mean, it is not like, because they don't certify me, but I will go through the process to sell my product to that certified retailer. So I can see a huge opportunity there for a small and medium companies, textile and leather companies like mine in Ethiopia. So I think this initiative has to come also backwards, helping us how I can be certified, how I can be really able to sell my product, being sustainable at the same time to sell to that retailer. So I mean, I can see a really huge opportunity, and I think I will start from my side, starting from today, what I can be able to do to be in that category and sell my product. But of course, from the German side, maybe they have to identify also companies who are able to buy my product, because I have a very strong story behind my brand. So who are the companies that they would be also help me to be on the track, to be green labeled, and not me, of course, the retailer who would buy my product. And I think it's huge opportunity. Trust me, I think there is a huge opportunity there for the small and medium textile and leather companies. And I'm really happy to continue this discussion later on with Uli or with whoever, that how I can be really a part of this process. Why not? I mean, there is a huge opportunity. I can see that, because certifying a retailer company to be sustainable, to buy products from companies that they are going to be like mine or any other company, small leather companies. I think Uli knows there are a lot, and I think they have worked a lot for companies like mine in the past, which they could be part of this process, selecting who is capable in production, in quality, etc., and getting back those support from GIZ or from any other entity, and move forward to export my product to these retailers. I think it's fantastic. I love it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we are already approaching 2:30 p.m. We may extend just a few more minutes, but there's also other sessions starting. So please, if you have any questions you would still like to ask our guests, please feel free to raise your hand, to bring any comment or question you may have. And I would just, in the meantime, give the word to you, Stefan Riel. And I was wondering, from more like an entrepreneurial perspective, how do you see the role of brands and retailers, but also the manufacturers, in this whole setting of trying to do things differently? And for example, what would be your point of view on, or your perspective on initiatives like the Green Button, but also maybe on what has been debated here in Germany a lot, supply chain law, which would require companies to really fulfill their corporate due diligence and hold them accountable for any ecological or human rights violations in the supply chain.
Yes. I mean, from my point of view is, after the pandemic is over, the whole, not only the textile industry, a lot of industries will have big challenges upcoming. Because, I mean, come back to the textile, there is always the question, do we need on the market a t-shirt for €3? I mean, it's the same question that you can say you buy in the supermarket a part of the chicken and it's €1 or something like this. I mean, in this case, you ask, what has the chicken eat that it's coming up for €1, and in the same time for the t-shirt for €3? I mean, do we have enough resources to produce continuous t-shirts for €3? I don't think so. And I also think that after the pandemic is over, there will be also a different thinking on the consumer side. Because I think Juliane Kahl said it before, everything is full. When you open the carpet and you see, wow, so many garments. And we have not only the problem in the future to bring the garments to the market, we will have also the problem to destroy the garments later on. Because this is, at least it's the same problem that in the supply chain. And we will see, I'm sure we will see some new industries also. We will see also that the factories and brands are coming up. They are producing garments and they're selling garments which are produced from old garments. Yes? Because there are slowly upcoming some factories, they are destroying old garments and make new garments again. Even in Ethiopia is already one factory established with a Turkish guy. They're destroying old garments and made new garments out. And at the same time, in the point of the consumer and in point of the brands, I check it by myself already. We have 148 opportunities for certifications. Yes? But the consumer is always learning, now I'm following this certification. For example, GOTS for cotton. Yeah? Oh, it looks good. Maybe it goes well 1 year, maybe it goes well 2 years. Now, last year we have the situation that 4 German brands, I cannot say the name, sorry, but 4 German brands, they are importing GOTS cotton items from India, and finally they make a several check on the garments, and they found out it's not bio cotton, and it's also not GOT certifications. It's conventional cotton, and the certification was fake in India. So, and now in the point of view of the consumer, they will say, why I should spend more money in case it's all fake again? But that's why I think the initiative with the green button and from Uli will have a good future. Because in this case, I think we can only be successful in case the things are really serious.
Yeah, it has a lot to do with trust and
exactly. And the second thing is also there are also some other programs upcoming, especially with this track and trace. I'm working also on such a system together with the Gesamtmasche to trace really from the cotton field the whole supply chain along until the garment is going to the shop. And we will do it also in two systems. One is the B2B system. So this has more background, and this has also more trace steps, which you can use also for the financial part and social part. And you can see also sometimes the factories, and you can see also the production flow. And for the consumer, it's more established, like when I buy this T-shirt with maybe instead of €3 for the T-shirt, maybe for €15 the T-shirt, is this money, when I invest this, is this going through all the steps along the supply chain until the end? Because I think in case only when we here build trust for the consumer, then they are also expecting. We don't need, I mean, when I start my job, we have 2 collections, one spring, summer, one autumn, winter. Mm. Then it continues with 4. Then it continues with 6. And now we are already by 12. And I think this is also over. Even for Zara, for Mango and all these people, even H&M is thinking about to reduce the programs because consuming need resources. And what we not have is too much resources.
That would actually already be a very nice final statement, but I would still like to give Lena Patz the opportunity to ask her question. No, it's already okay. Yeah, then I don't see any questions at the moment from the audience. Please feel free to comment in the chat still, but then I would like to come to a conclusion now since we're approaching 2:30, and I would just do one last round with my 4 guests here and hear really short statements. What are your visions for the future of the fashion industry? How can the fashion industry be designed in a more future-proof way? And what could be visions and narratives for a fashion industry beyond the narrative of constant growth and fast production? So maybe we can start with you, Gannett, and your visions and perspectives on the future.
Okay, I mean, I see a lot of opportunities. Thank you for this amazing panel discussion, which it's really enlightened me a lot. And I hope I will be part of the process because I have worked so hard in my sector and try to bring in more designers, more people like me that they have really struggled in this business. And I think we have to work together, as I said before, because the opportunity is huge. Once you start this project, it's like we need to put really a certain goals where we really want. As a company myself, I want to really dream where I want to see myself in the next 2 years to sell my product to the German market.